So today I was thinking, what should I talk about? Because I try to do a video every day. I've decided to do more than one today. Um, but I was thinking about this yesterday, and that is that I have spent so many hours of my life watching BS, just watching garbage, watching people pretending to be for a cause, but the reality is that they themselves are questionable. They themselves are just servants to a particular bureaucratic policy, to some sort of status quo that they have to keep in order to maintain whatever position that they want to keep. Um, what do I mean by that? I'm not trying to talk in riddles here. Years and years ago, I used to spend hours watching a lot of Catholic apologists. And they made good arguments, right? They made good arguments against Protestants. They made good arguments for the Catholic faith. And I appreciated that. But then as I spent more and more time in the church, I began to notice so many weird and odd things. And I've talked a lot about that on this channel. I've written a lot about this on shoebot.com. So I don't really have to repeat myself on that. But I've just seen a lot of weird things, weird priests who were sexual predators, priests who would prey on young men, like just bizarre stuff. And I'm looking at these apologists that I used to watch all the time. I used to spend hours watching. And then I'm looking at this situation, and it's almost like the type of scenario where something looks better in your head than it does in real life. You ever have a thought that sounds really good, or you have an idea that sounds really good in your head, but then when you actually put it on paper or when you actually discuss it with other people, you're like, wait a second, that sounds completely ridiculous. That's kind of like what was happening with me. Like, well, it sounds really good. I'm listening to all these apologists and they're making really great arguments. But then I'm seeing this situation happening. And I'm not saying that this disproves Catholicism or anything like that, but it does definitely make one disillusioned with the system. It makes one disillusioned with the institution. And it definitely brings a lot of the idealism that we can have to question. It brings it to cross examination. It makes you wonder: is it really worth it all? Like, is it worth fighting for? Is this whole institution worth fighting for? Is the Catholic Church worth fighting for? This is truly the questions that have been running through my mind for a number of years now. It's crazy. It's crazy. Now, if you were to ask me this question back in 2013, 2014, I would have said yes. But then after going through the experiences and after dealing with so much bureaucratic garbage in the Catholic Church, it's like that question becomes more and more potent, and the weight of that question gets heavier. Uh, a lot of these apologists they're just maintaining a certain position. They're maintaining a certain status quo, a certain narrative. And you look at the institution, and this video is not just about the Catholic Church. It's about our idealism in general and questioning our idealism. And I'm just giving you this as an example. But we spend, so many hours watching this stuff. I have spent a lot of hours in my life watching this stuff. And they'll make great arguments for Catholicism, and they're great debaters, and they're apologists, and they're all these things. But then you look at the actual reality of what's happening, or what has been happening for decades in the Catholic Church, and you're like, wait a second, what the hell are you guys doing about this? What are you, apologists, you talkers for the church, you defenders of the church, what are you doing about this? And the answer to that is really nothing. Nothing. You guys are really doing nothing about it. And some of them may even pose as people who are like, trying to fix things. But are they really? Are they really doing that? Or are they just dragging people into a different type of deception? I used to spend hours watching Michael Voris. I have spent hours watching Church Militant TV. Spent hours doing this. Watching his little lectures, his conference speeches. I've watched his interviews. I used to watch The Vortex, where lies and falsehoods are trapped and exposed. I used to watch that every single day. It was like a ritual for me. I would get my lunch, or my dinner or whatever, turn on YouTube, go on Church Militant, and I knew there was going to be a video from Church Militant every day, every weekday at least. During the weekends when maybe there was no Church Militant, I don't remember. It's been so long since I actually went out of my way to watch Church Militant. But, you would watch a lecture by Michael Voris. You would watch something by Father Rippinger, or however you say his name. You would watch a debate, Catholic versus Protestant. You would watch Sungenis, whatever. You'd watch all these guys. And I remember I used to watch Church Militant, watch Voris, and I truly believed in my heart that Voris was a guy who wanted to do the right thing. He was trying to do the right thing. And then I saw, in 2017, I saw Voris with Milo. I saw that he began to collaborate with Milo Yiannopoulos. Milo Yiannopoulos is a guy who literally has made arguments in defense of pederasty. And I remember I thought, okay, and it's amazing. When you expose somebody, you always have people who come to you and say, why didn't you call him about it? Why didn't you talk to him about it? Like, for example, when I wrote an article about Glenn Beck years ago, and I had people write to me, well, why didn't you call up Glenn Beck? I'm sure he would have talked to you. So I decided, okay, I'm going to call up Michael Voris. So I gave Michael Voris a call, and I said, hey, Michael, you know that Milo has actually defended pederasty. He's talked about homosexual eugenics, like all this weird stuff. He didn't care. Frankly, Michael Voris didn't give a shit. That interview is actually nowhere to be found on YouTube. It used to be on YouTube, and then it's no more. It's no longer there. But I confronted Voris on it, and he didn't give a damn. He didn't care. And then he brought Milo onto his show, like still showing that he does not care. And I'm thinking, if this guy really wants to fight the network of predators in the priesthood, why is he bringing in a guy? Why is he supporting and collaborating with a guy who has literally defended pederasty? So you have to ask yourself, are these types of people really trying to fix the problem, or are they just bringing people down a path of another type of deception, or really the same type of evil that's under a different form or has a different face that is even more deceptive than the type of stuff that they see in the church? That's what's going on. But I've spent so many hours of my life watching debaters and apologists, especially when I was in high school, or when I got out of high school. I would look into like different books and apologists and conservative writers and talkers, and I would listen to Dennis Prager all the time. And then you see Dennis Prager saying some really disgusting stuff like, the Bible says you can love a young girl just like you could a young boy, and it's just sick stuff. So now I just have to ask the question, like, when are the army of angry commenters gonna actually fix the problem? Because you have all these old people, all these older folks, and some young people as well, who are like, oh, Pope Francis said this, and Pope Francis is a communist, and the Vatican is and this one bishop said this, and what's going on, what's happening right now? And it's like, you have to come to the point where you just ask yourself, what is the point of it all? What is the point of just being angry about this stuff all the time? When are these, in other words, when are these people just going to stop being surprised? Because I have stopped being surprised by pretty much everything. Like, almost nothing surprises me now. Oh, Pope Francis said that, we need civil unions. Okay. Doesn't shock me. I've seen so many weird things in the Catholic Church. Does not shock me. Doesn't shock me. Oh, this guy, Jordan Peterson. And Jordan Peterson is not Catholic, but again, I'm not here just to single out the Catholic Church. I'm here to talk about this phenomena of people just following ideologues like blind sheep. And I'm telling people, don't make the same mistake that I made, which is to just watch these people all the time and think, oh yeah, they're heroes or whatever. But you have older folks who are like, oh, this Jordan Peterson guy, he's standing up for men. He's standing up for men and for Christians and Christianity. And then you actually look into Jordan Peterson and you find ties with eugenics, and you find evolutionism and Darwinistic thinking and mixing mythology with, pagan mythology with Christianity. Just all sorts of weird stuff. And it's like, well, this guy is basically just leading you into the same stuff that leftists would lead you to, but he's doing it in a right-wing sort of way. He's doing it in a more cunning and deceptive way for Christians to get sucked into. And it's like, why do people blindly follow these types of persons? They just blindly follow. Oh, majority. It's like anyone who says the right thing, you guys follow that person like blind sheep. It reminds me of a story from the Middle Ages. During the First Crusade, there was a lot of weird things in the Crusades, by the way. But during the First Crusade, there was a group of people in France who decided that they were going to go fight the Muslims on their own, because when the Pope declared the Crusade, he made it very clear only trained soldiers, knights, people who were trained fighters, could go on this crusade. Untrained people, peasants who were not trained, regular folks who were not trained, they should not participate because they're going to get their asses handed to them. And there was a group of people in France who saw a duck. I am not exaggerating this. You can look this up. They saw a duck, quack, 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 walking around. And they said, look, a duck. It was like something out of a BBC comedy. Look, a duck! It's quacking! She's quacking! It's a duck from God! God sent the duck! And they all started following the duck. A lot of these people ended up getting slaughtered. There's a story that I read about a bunch of these peasants who thought that God was going to be on their side if they were to go fight against the Muslims without any training at all. We're going to fight the Muslims by ourselves. It was like the EDL circa 1098. And they went to the Middle East. They marched there all the way from Europe, only to be utterly slaughtered by Seljukian warriors from the Middle East, but originally from Central Asia. Proud warriors who probably throat sang for fun. Yeah, peasants from France, they had no match. But people follow ideologues just like these people followed that duck. Blindly. It's exactly what Jesus warned us about. The blind following the blind. And when Jesus was on earth, he was warning people about the same thing. You guys follow these leaders. You follow these Pharisees. You follow these scribes. You follow these whatever, these religious leaders. And they are blind, and you are blindly following them. And it's amazing that the Bible says that when Jesus saw the situation in Judea, he said that the people have no shepherd. And you could have asked him, well, Jesus, of course they have shepherds. They have all these religious leaders. And to Jesus, these weren't shepherds. These were hirelings. What is the difference between a shepherd and a hireling? A hireling is someone who does a job for money. And that's what the leadership of the temple became. They became people who were just having a job. The priesthood became a career. And that's the case for a lot of the Catholic Church. The position of priest has become just a stable career. Think about it. You work for the Catholic Church. You do Mass 3 times a day, twice a day. You hear confessions twice a week, maybe 3 times a week. You go through it all, and you have, you can give your little homily on Sunday, and the homily could be just some soft some soft message that's coded with nice words but has an insidious agenda, and you go home and your paycheck is absolutely secure. There was a guy in Ireland. He was a bishop, I believe, in Ireland, and before he died, he said that I'm actually an atheist, and he retired. He retired from his clerical position, and he did an interview, and he admitted that he was an atheist and he didn't believe in anything that he said. And they asked him, well, why did you continue on with your clerical position of priest or bishop? And he said it was a steady paycheck. That's what he said. Steady paycheck. And I think that's the case for a lot of people. A lot of these people. It's like these Christian rock musicians. I remember there was a Christian rock musician, I forget his name, but he was arrested for trying to murder his wife. And he was a big singer in the Christian metal industry. I'll look him up right now. And he actually admitted that a lot of these Christian musicians, Tim Lambesis, that was his name, he said that a lot of these Christian musicians are actually just atheists. He said this. You can look it up. He said a lot of these people are just literal atheists. And they know that the Christian music industry is kind of an untapped resource. It's not the biggest market, but nonetheless, it's a market that's big enough to make a good living out of it, to make a good amount of money out of it, especially, if you make it, that is. And because it's a smaller market, it's easier to become famous in it because there's such few people who actually want to become Christian singers as opposed to secular singers, that people who actually want to listen to Christian rock and roll, they're going to be grabbing whatever pops up in the market. So it's easier to become famous. It's one of the reasons why Amy Lee from Evanescence, the song, what was that? Wake Me Up Inside. It was a huge hit back in 2003. When Amy Lee of Evanescence first popped up in the music industry, she marketed herself as a Christian singer. Why? Because it was an easier market to get into. Right when she got famous and they were playing her songs on all the Christian radio stations and they were selling her CDs at all the Christian bookstores and all that. But once she got that super fame and people in the secular world were listening to her, she left that market because she didn't need it anymore. But yeah, I think that this is the case, not just in music, but in the entire industry of talking, in the entire industry of expression. Political expression. I think that this is the case for a lot of the people that we follow. I don't really follow these people anymore. They're just people who are touting a line, keeping the status quo. If you look at the situation in the Vatican, full of psychos, full of predators who don't mind preying on young men, who don't mind sexually harassing young men, and the Vatican doesn't really do much about it. And these people who are apologists for the Catholic Church, they really don't do anything about it anyway because they just want to keep a narrative. And at this point, they're basically like people who will defend America for anything, right? They are people who worship the United States, or they have a job. They have a job of defending America, and they're apologists for America, or they have a job defending the Republican Party or the Democrat Party, and they will defend those parties for anything, over anything. Doesn't matter how evil the parties may be, doesn't matter what evil they do, they will defend the party. That's what a lot of these apologists for the Catholic Church are. They're just people who will defend the institution. They're like diplomats at this point. But in this case, they're diplomats for Vatican City, not for America. Yeah, a lot of these people, I think they're that way, and we spend so much of our time watching these types of people. And people ask me, "Oh, Theodore, do you have you ever looked at this Catholic apologist? Do you ever look at this guy's YouTube channel? Do you ever?" And the answer to all this stuff is no. No, I don't look at any of this stuff. When I watch YouTube, I'm watching 3 or 4 things. I'm watching videos of gardens. I don't even watch videos on how to garden stuff, because to me, gardening is just about working with the climate, and once you know your climate, then you can garden pretty efficiently. I'm looking at gardens for inspiration. I'm looking at videos from like random Eastern European towns and villages because I find that to be absolutely fascinating. I'm looking at cooking videos. I'm looking at martial arts, or I'm watching videos on video games. That's pretty much what I look at in YouTube. Or I'm looking at like crazy political debates, and I just watch those for entertainment. But it's not. I'm not too crazy about the debates where people are just like, you get your 2 minutes and you get your 2 minutes, and I'm not. I like debates where two people just go at it and it's free for all. Those are a lot of fun, But I don't look at that stuff. I used to, but I don't waste my time with that anymore because I don't really like following hirelings, and I think that people who get super famous really quickly are questionable. That's my opinion. They're questionable. If you get famous, like I understand that you've been working really hard and you've been struggling, and then you finally get some interviews and maybe you get somewhere. Like I can get that, but there are certain people who have become so famous, like they become ridiculously famous overnight. You never even heard of them, and then boom, like they're all over your YouTube algorithm. And I think that a lot of these people, be they on the right or the left, are very questionable. For example, like Jordan Peterson, he's questionable. He honestly is very questionable. Talks about evolution a lot, has a lot of Darwinian language, will reference Nietzsche, references pagan mythology way too much, has ties to eugenics. Just bizarre. I don't like it. Yeah. But I've become disillusioned with the entire industry. I don't care. And I like to do videos talking about disillusionment. Yeah, that's what I like to talk about. I think it's a lot of fun, and I think it's super fascinating. And I love to talk about geopolitics because geopolitics, when you actually look into like political situations, doesn't matter the country, you can get an idea of reality, and you can sort of predict what's going to happen next. And I think that's really important to understand what big global events are going to take place, like a world war. I think that's important to know. Anyway, you guys just heard some theology. God bless.